Welcome to Direct Approach, a bi-weekly podcast hosted by Wayne Moorhead, filled with timely insights, fresh perspectives, and actionable takeaways from your direct selling executive peers to help fuel the growth and evolution of your business. Join us today as Nick Johnson, Chief Field Operations Officer of Medifast and President of OPTAVIA, shares insights on aligning an organization around a unified brand and single business model in a market and category that's experiencing a shakeup like never before. Ranked number 11 on DSN's 2023 Global 100 list and recently reporting $1.1 billion in 2023 annual revenue, Medifast drives OPTAVIA, a rapidly expanding health and wellness community dedicated to facilitating lifelong transformations through scientifically backed products and personalized coaching for weight management. In this interview, Nick discusses Medifast's multi-transformation journey from a house of allied brands to an integrated company focused on their OPTAVIA brand. Additionally, Nick stresses the value of establishing trust with field leaders during such a significant transition. He also shares operational shifts like transitioning to contract manufacturing and outsourced customer service to enable growth. If you're undergoing transformation in your organization, this discussion provides an inside look at change management across people, process, and technology. But before we begin, this episode is sponsored by Exigo. Exigo was started by a team of experts that shared a single vision: to overturn the archaic, restrictive model of housing data and create an entirely new kind of platform from the ground up. From your first dollar to your billionth and beyond, Exigo's platform scales in lockstep with your global growth, aspirations, and vision. With clients in 120 countries, supporting 40 currencies and 30 languages, plus over 200 open APIs and SDKs, they empower an existing tech team to control their own best-in-class solution vision. To connect and learn more, visit exigo.com. That is EXIGO.com. Now, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorhead, and today's guest, Chief Field Operations Officer of Medifast and President of OPTAVIA, Nick Johnson.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I am your host, Wayne Moorhead, and today's guest has more than 10 years of experience in the direct selling channel across multiple companies, where he has held significant roles in corporate and market leadership. He's currently at a large public company where his responsibilities include sales, marketing, field alignment strategy, coach compensation, technology, strategy and business, and actually so much more. I'm excited to welcome Nick Johnson, Chief Field Operations Officer at Medifast and President of OPTAVIA. Nick, thank you so much for being here.
Wayne, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate you making the time. We know this is a really busy time for the company, a very exciting time, so much appreciated. Can we start out by having you share just a little bit about the path that led you into the direct selling channel?
Absolutely. It was not too terribly dissimilar from how maybe distributors or, coaches or ambassadors, brand advocates, whatever the nomenclature is for the different companies. It's not that different from how they get involved with direct sales. It was word of mouth. It just happened to be on the corporate side. I was at a point where I was thinking about either going back to school or going in another direction, having graduated and have being part of a startup for a few years at the end of my undergraduate career. And my sister, who was working for the former company, the company I used to work for, said, "Hey, I would really love you to take a look at what we're doing over here." And so it was a word of mouth kind of recommendation. And I saw what the company was doing, and then she described a position that was open. And I said, I think that would be a great fit. And after, a few weeks, I absolutely fell in love with the business model. I fell in love with the people who are out there being powerful advocates for the brand, who are looking to build these home-based businesses, who sought the type of autonomy that was empowering. And I saw all these things, and it came together for me in a very unique way, but not unique across the board. I think other people who have had similar experiences would say the same thing. They saw these attributes of this business model and they said, wow, you get to build teams, you get to enjoy great products, services, and you get to be inspired by helping people achieve what they would like to achieve. And that's how you actually grow and gain success. I fell in love. And that's how I entered the industry.
That's great. I love that. And I agree. I had a really similar experience. It is amazing once you first work at or exposed to the direct selling channel, you do immediately fall in love. The people are amazing. It just, every time I've maybe swung out and left to go to a D2C company or a startup or something, every time I come back in, it always does kind of feel like home. And I think you were also fortunate to be at a really great company. I had spent some time there as well. That company does an amazing job of really developing leaders that end up having significant roles in companies throughout the channel. And you certainly moved up really quickly there and held very significant roles. So congratulations on your success there. And we are glad that somebody recommended a company that they love to you and that you felt the same about it. So you joined your current company at a super interesting time. It was maybe somewhat of a complex organization, a successful but complex organization operating 4 different sales channels, each of those channels having a very unique customer set with unique needs, wants, and desires. And at the time, the company was going through kind of a large corporate transformation. Can you talk a little bit about the strategic catalyst for this transformation and what was the objective or opportunities that it was trying to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everything started with that transformation around key insights, key consumer insights, and performance of our customers across the different channels. So when we were operating the 4-channel model, we had the great advantage of being able to look across those different channels and do sort of a champion challenger. Okay, so which customers or which clients are performing better? Is it through the doctor's offices? Was it through the self-guided, diet, the Medifast diet? Was it through the weight loss centers, right? The brick and mortar weight loss centers. We had franchisees operating those. And then you had the direct sales channel whose differentiation came in the form of coaching and a lifestyle program called the Habits of Health System. And when we studied those different channels and the success of those clients, by the results that they achieved, but also by the lifetime value, right? Because we have to satisfy all the different stakeholders. Are we doing right by the consumer? Yes. Who's having outsized impact in terms of results? But then what does that mean for the company? And we looked at the lifetime value and we said, okay, what are the insights here? Number one, those customers were more successful when they were connected with a coach and the community, as they're achieving their weight loss goals and then their ongoing health goals. And number two, they were practicing the habits of health. They were installing habits and changing the underlying structure of their lives that was supported by the coach, supported by the community. And so that differentiation through that channel gave us the confidence to say, let's go all in and transform the company from a set of allied businesses with shared services at the backbone to an integrated company. And then when that decision was made and the strategy was set, we started to get to work, and it was a wild ride.
Oh, I'm sure. I think it says a lot about the leadership there and how you approach the operations of the business, that you really started by looking at the strategic foundation. What are our key audiences, key consumers, insights, gathering those insights, turning them into action and into strategies. I'm curious, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that internal process. Was kind of that strategic development driven at the executive level? Was a maybe temporary but dedicated strategy group put together? Was it a little more bottoms up that involved the broader organization? What was that process like, and how was it led?
Yeah, at the center of it was the executive team. The executive team really operated as really is that transformation office, but rather than having a transformation office, it was just the company. And we used a series of project teams with the appropriate steering committees to guide certain aspects of the work, obviously divesting from other channels and repurposing functions in support of the new business takes a tremendous amount of effort. This was happening at the same time we were switching out enterprise systems like ERP systems, our commerce engine. All of this had to be done at the same time. So yeah, there was a tremendous amount of rigor and structure and the governance that was necessary in order to execute the magnitude of change and the quantity of changes across the enterprise required the entire company to be bought in. And I'll just share one quick anecdote from that time.
Yeah,
so
please.
I came in with the understanding that the company was transforming and integrating around this coach channel, right? This coach model. And I understood the insights and I understood the direction. But once you get inside, you really see what's going on, the magnitude of change. And one day I showed up, this is like maybe a weekend, and I'm getting to know my new team. And the gentleman responsible for running the franchises through the Medifast, on the Medifast side, said, all right, well, I'm your new direct report. I'm like, wow, okay, so the franchises are reporting into me. Great. And he said, and I resign. And I said, thank you. Thank you. That makes it so easy. And that was just an example of how strategy, as we know, like strategy is as much as about what you do not do. So there was no temptation to go, oh, well, maybe we should make, it was like, no, we said, we are moving in this direction. We are decisive and we're not moving back, right? We're not changing course. We have to get through. And creating that clarity and removing the ambiguity was crucial in setting the teams inside the company on a good path so they could pick up all of their tools and start going to work.
There's a lot in what you said right there. I want to circle back to a really important statement you just made of the significance of deciding what you won't do, not just what you will do. And I feel like in any strategic development process or in developing and launching a new brand and company, people are very serious and deliberate about developing some of those core brand elements, your purpose, your positioning. Here's our mission. Here's our vision. This is who we are. And they put those stakes in and they feel pretty firm. They feel pretty solid. And then when potential growth opportunities or other voices, maybe from the field or consumers come in, those become a little bit soft. And there's a tendency to maybe move away from those in the pursuit of growth. And then what almost always ends up happening is you end up kind of getting lost because you aren't anchored really to anything. And so I do think it's really important to say these are the few things that we are all about, and these are the things that we will never do, and to create that clarity. And you also talked about the tremendous amount of rigor that was needed to do a transformation, which is absolutely correct. It's beyond annual planning, quarterly planning. A transformation is so vast and comprehensive. And as you kind of alluded to, there's also a lot of risk, not just the rigor, but the inherent risk in disrupting the business and taking steps backwards and ultimately having the entire transformation be a fail. So we know that having a great strategy is amazing, but if you don't align the business and the organization around it, success is going to be elusive. Can you discuss what some of the things that the company did to effectively align their audiences? And by that, I mean the internal, the organizational structure, the employees, the field. How did you align them around this new strategy, this new positioning, this new messaging, and new offering?
I love this question, and I smile when I hear it because so much of the discomfort from aligning the field, aligning other stakeholders, right? Whether it's your board of directors, whether it's your employees, all the different stakeholder groups have to be aligned. And when I joined, the first thing that I did with the field, we had the new strategy, and understand this channel right? The OPTAVIA channel, the direct sales channel within Medifast. Medifast was a dirty word to our field.
Interesting.
In fact, when we moved into a new building, a new headquarters in Harbor East in Baltimore, there was an outcry from the field over the fact that we were putting Medifast on the building, not OPTAVIA. They were threatening to boycott ever coming to the office. It was that intense. Why? Because they were competition. The other channels were competing. So they had a distrust for the company because they viewed these other channels as a threat to what they were trying to accomplish. So when I recognized this before I accepted, and I knew that something significant had to be done, and something that had never been done before by management, I took the list of top leaders. And in my first 60 days, I visited with every single one of them in their homes. I spent the time to understand their stories, and I listened for about 85% of the time. And in some of these occasions, we spent the entire day talking. Tell me your history. Spending time with the co-founder of OPTAVIA, who's a medical doctor, who had been with us for 20 years and still very much part of what we were doing. And he explained how it all came together and the partnership with Medifast. I wanted to know everything about their story. And then I could tell them where we were going and tell them it was going to be okay. And tell them that we're going to develop a relationship of trust. But trust is established by making promises and keeping promises. And that's what we would do. And I promised them that as we went through this transformation, that we would be open and honest and transparent. And at the same time, we would not retreat from our position. We would continue to move forward. And so when we talked about this with leaders and going from, you can't even say the word Medifast, to one of the most incredible, enriching, powerful partnerships of trust that I've ever been involved in, now 6 years later, is remarkable. But spending the time to align field, and it's not aligning with, here are the metrics, here's a story, but aligning at the human level of establishing a relationship of trust to say, okay, when you speak, I listen. That was fundamental. And the deposits that we made in the trust vault then, we've been able to withdraw from time to time because the transformation has been rigorous. It's been intense. It's been not without mistakes, but we get back on track. We still deliver what we promised we would deliver back to our field.
Wow, that's such a great story. I think speaks a lot to your leadership and to the company's approach and the value that they place on the distributors that you went out personally. I think today, and I know for me, there's the tendency to let's hop on Zoom real quick. We're just going to download the field. We're going to talk to the distributors and, we'll check that box and we're going to move on. But going and sitting personally face to face, I know had an enormous impact in them trusting you in kind of onboarding and not just understanding the business, but really helping to hold the field's hand along this potentially very disruptive process. I think that speaks to a lot. And I love that you talked about making deposits in the trust vault, because absolutely there are going to be days and times where we need to make those withdrawals, but it would have been really easy, I think, for you just to pick up the phone and in 2 days go through the entire leadership and tell your boss that you've talked to everybody and everything's great. But I think that went a long way in making sure that it was a success. I think there's a lot to learn there. Too often we do just kind of drop change on the field. Maybe it's on our monthly call and we just say, hey, this is coming down the pike. Don't take the time to listen, to understand, to even hear their point of view. So there's so many lessons in there. I think another really important lesson from this transformation is your ability to align the entire organization around a single brand, where maybe there was dislike or one of the brands had lost kind of some of its favor. I think the two options would have been to really create a individual brand that supports each channel and then just operate them completely independently, but they would at least have a cohesive offering, a cohesive brand, cohesive messaging that supports those audiences. But it's really impressive because the more difficult task, we're aligning all those disparate audiences around a single brand. Can you talk about the importance of why you went kind of branded house versus house of brands?
It's a great question. When Dan Chard, the CEO and chairman, my boss, joined in 2016, was looking at this transformation, established the transformation strategy, and looked across those different business units and said, okay, we just launched the bespoke OPTAVIA brand, which was consistent with the consumer that we were looking to target, and understanding that consumer very well, and understanding how that brand and basically the elasticity of that brand could play well with our growth strategy. And then it was quite easy. You do the same sort of analysis of the existing brand, right? Medifast back then was a product brand that all those channels shared. And you ask the question, well, how is it perceived by the consumer? And you get to the root of it really fast and you say, does it have legs? Or maybe it's kind of run its course. And then the question is, as you go down that decision tree, do you evolve it or do you put it on mothballs? And we chose to create greater focus and simplicity on the targets through the brand and not try to straddle it. And so we made the strategic decision. The strategy actually made the decision for us. And then we just had to go and execute against it. And so we sunset the Medifast brand as we were sunsetting these other channels through which those Medifast products and programs flowed. And again, I go back to how one decision actually leads to, or actually represents 1,000 decisions. And creating simplicity through the strategy by not having to revisit your decisions is key for a transformation, in my opinion. You ask yourself the fundamental question, what can we uniquely do for customers, consumers, right? In our case, clients, what can we uniquely do? How can we transform? What brand do we need to actually tell that story, make that promise, deliver against it? And then how elastic is it?
Yeah, there's a masterclass in what you just said right there. I hope everybody takes the time to hit the rewind button by about 2 minutes. You're right. Brands are elastic. You can stretch them, but you can also stretch them so far that they break. And I think it was a really risky but wonderful and pivotal decision to create this OPTAVIA, to have that as kind of the key brand that everything focuses on. Someone could have looked at it and said, look, the Medifast brand has been around for a long time. There's all this equity. Are you really wanting to walk away from this equity? And yes, there's absolutely equity in associations that you want to pull from a brand, but there's also potential contagion. If a brand has reached a certain point where it's not supportive, then yeah, you have to make the tough decision of, do we kind of steer a little bit away from the brand, even though it's been, in the brand architecture for a long time. So a lot in what you just said. Also, I'm glad you brought up Dan. I was fortunate to work for Dan at a moment in my career, a really impressive individual that I learned so much from. I don't know if I've even been able to share that with him at any point, but just an incredible strategist and operator, and had a big impact on my career. So I'm glad that you've had the opportunity to work with him as well.
Yeah,
so
he's incredible.
I want to shift for just a second, kind of away from the process to the product. Can you talk about the role that the product played and the need for having that deep understanding of the consumer needs, wants, and desires?
Absolutely. In our case, when we talk about product, we talk about it in a very specific way, and that's unique to our offering. So product plays the role. In our case, these are nutrient-dense meal replacements, right? Medifast has been a food manufacturer since 1981. And these products, these fuelings, play a very important role as part of a program, right? We have different plans, weight loss plans, but the product itself plays a role in going beyond what at surface level you might think the role that they're playing. And let me give you an example. And we know this, like, I think it was like Peter Drucker who famously said, companies rarely sell the thing that the consumer is actually buying, right? I'm butchering it, but that's essentially it. They think we're selling this when you're actually, if you ask the consumer, it's something quite different. The role that we view the product to play, in our case, is safe, efficacious, clinically proven, backed by science, effective in delivering a result, an outcome that the consumer wants. Lose weight in a healthy, sustainable, safe, efficacious way. The other role that our products play is installing the habit. Can you install the habit of healthy eating? Are you mindful about what you're putting into your body? Making that connection between the daily activity, consuming 5 of our meals a day, and we teach you how to do 1, is a powerful mechanism to build the long-term success that somebody needs to sustain a healthy lifestyle. Diets don't work. That's why we have resolution season every year. The way to install health is through installation of habits, whether it's macro habits or micro habits, creating that mindfulness, that teachable moment that you can then build a healthy foundation or rebuild your healthy foundation. They serve a unique purpose, but not all products are winners. And I think the challenge in my experience over time has been when you listen to all voices, it's like a cacophony, and you can't get clear. And if you can't get clear, how confident can you be in your decisions when it's time to rationalize a portfolio? It's always going to be, you're always going to find somebody who's going to say, that's my favorite. Oh, that was my favorite flavor. That was my favorite product. It can't go away. And if the voice is loud enough, sometimes it's tempting to listen to that voice over your own data, your metrics, the consumer. You could show up in a meeting and say, well, the consumer's saying this, that this is a dog. Look at the hedonic scale. Like, it's scoring terribly low. It's performing low sales-wise, but a couple people really love it. Who wins? I think making your decision-making very explicit, again, going back to the things that you will allow and the things that you will not allow, and say, okay, the people that are very passionate about this product, who want it to continue forever and ever, we're going to spend time with you, and we're going to educate you, and we're going to give you the data, and we're going to treat you as a business owner, because you're a business owner, you're a partner of ours. You want your business to perform well, don't you? We're going to share with you that we wouldn't do anything that would hurt our business and therefore your business. But it takes an investment of time because we get very attached to product. So the rigor that it takes to maintain your portfolio, to make sure that your margins are where they need to be, to make sure that line time is dedicated appropriately. Why would we spend our line time on this product when this is the real winner? You have to be empowered with the right data to make the decisions and acknowledge that as humans, we can become emotionally compromised. But our job in management is to make sure that our field is well equipped with the evidence so that they feel confident saying, you know what, there is something better. And maybe I've just got used to this a little too much.
I love that. You're speaking my language. That has been one of the most significant challenges, I think, in my career, especially for some reason in the direct selling space, is, or at least the process of rationalizing the portfolio. We always go about it with great intentions and hopefully data and a rational mind. And we do end up bumping up against those roadblocks, whether it's the field or whether it's a founder who created the product. And there is so much love and history in that product that the thought is there's no way it could possibly go away. How could we on earth, end up rationalizing or sunsetting that product? It is a really delicate process. And I love that, again, you went back to the data and you went back to the field so that it wasn't just, hey, here's an email. These are the things that are going away, no. But taking the time to have those conversations. I'm curious, as you did maybe meet some resistance, whether it was the field or even internally, what were some of the main ideas or concepts that helped them understand that this was for the better of the overall company?
I'll take an example. I approach these types of conversations with field leaders with joy. Like they're some of my favorite conversations to have, because I love getting in their lives and saying, tell me why this matters to you so much. When you go there and you realize, okay, they have a strong personal connection to it. Maybe it's their family's favorite fueling. Like maybe it's what they love to eat together. Like, what are the rituals that they've created around these products? I don't want just a slice of the picture. I want the whole picture. Why? Because I never want to come off as dismissive. These are our partners. You don't treat partners that way. You don't just make an executive order and say, deal with it. Well, you can, but a different type of partnership emerges. It's not a partnership of trust. So I remember having a conversation with some field leaders around a product that had been around for a long time. And here's where it gets a little bit interesting. This was a product that we were looking to rationalize that was not the OPTAVIA brand. It was actually the Medifast brand. And I said, wait a minute. I remember being in a meeting where you were falling out of your chair because we were going to put the Medifast name and you're consuming this in your home. Well, we love it. I'm like, okay, well, tell me why you love it. Okay, and they explained why they loved it. And I said, let me share with you what percentage of revenue this product means for your business. And then I went on to explain, here's my struggle with what you're telling me. You want this product to stay. You want it to stay, but you never made it the hero. So it can't stay. I said this, if I were to tell you, you have 90 days to make this product, to get it beyond the threshold that we have assigned for rationalization, would you do it? Could you do it? And they looked at me and said, it wouldn't make sense, would it? And I said,
Wow.
You tell me. I said, but I can tell you, I would not be coming and saying we're doing this if it were to harm your business.
Wow, that's really powerful. I was just taking notes. I'm going to have to write a script, I think, based on that. And I'm definitely going to approach it with a different mindset than I have in the past. I think I have approached it more of, look, this is just what has to happen. Yes, let's try to give them as much notice and heads up. But I am probably guilty of not giving the consideration to the emotional impact, or as you mentioned, the rituals and other ways that product plays a role in their life, in their family's life. So I'm definitely going to, next time I'm faced with this dilemma, going to definitely approach it in a really different way. Thank you for sharing that example. So I know in times past, you've talked a lot about the evolution that's taking place in the direct selling channel. And this is something we're all experiencing, we're all feeling. We know the changes happening. We don't all have kind of that North Star to kind of start running to. So we're all figuring it out. So I would love for you to share some of those changes or shifts that you're seeing taking place in the channel and what you think they mean for us.
Changes in the channel are really an after effect, aren't they? The change in the channel is a change in consumer behavior. Now, I'm going to talk about two consumers. I'm going to talk about the consumer, end consumer, end user of a product or service. But there's another change in the consumer, right? The consumer of the opportunity. And I asked myself the question, rather than tell ourselves that we love our channel, we love our industry, maybe ask the question, why don't more people love it the way we do? And getting super curious about what it is that what need we're not meeting for the consumer, either of the product or service that we're offering, or the consumer or potential consumer of the opportunity that we're sharing. Now, I applaud so many companies, like my former company, I was with Nu Skin for 10 years. So many companies who take on a challenge and say, it's time to evolve, it's time to change, who have the courage to do that. I think every company that I'm aware of, I don't know of a company that can't avoid it. And why avoid it? Why do avoid the change? I say lean into the change. All progress is disrupted by nature, and history teaches us that the greatest business opportunities are a result of disruption. So rather than look at that as a threat, I look at it as a tremendous opportunity. But the opportunity only emerges when we get super curious about what's happening with the public, the general population. Do we understand our target well enough? Has the target shifted? Have they aged out of what we offer? How do people like to get paid? I applaud companies that are looking at that and asking the question and saying, quite frankly, I don't really know, but I'm super curious and I want to find out, because what I do know is that word of mouth businesses, personal recommendations are powerful. I don't think that will ever change. We just need to build around that differently, don't we? And, my sister, who worked at my previous company, she's now on the executive committee at doTERRA. I think all companies talk about this just in different ways. Some people talk about it like what's happening with the consumer of the product. Somebody's saying, well, is it a naming issue? Is it a reputation issue? I say, yes, yes, yes. Force the yes. Don't say that it's not, because you might be operating based on your own bias or your own personal love for something. And I'm going to tie it back to this conversation I had with a field leader about a product that was going to be rationalized. And I think that maybe sometimes companies are like that person that's holding on because it represents something more to that person. So we just refuse to change, even though things have been disrupted. And we then kind of say disruption is a bad thing. No, we got to break that loop. We have to break that mental loop. Disruption is good. Disruption is healthy. And the irony, well, it's not ironic. I just don't think we reflect on it enough. As consumers, you and I, Wayne, we expect progress from our brands that we buy. We expect it from other companies. We don't tolerate it. We don't have patience for it. Why do we have the same patience for the brands that we operate, for the companies that we operate? My mind goes there all the time. So I'm a big fan of curiosity, of exploring, of elimination of options, and then execution against the strategy that's going to leverage the disrupted environment. So that's my long-winded answer.
No, I love that. I love your comment, especially that disruption is good. Oftentimes it can be a time of fear if we're looking at it from one perspective, but it is also a time of great opportunity. And as you mentioned, person to person, those personal recommendations, that is how we buy. The future of commerce is going to continue to be ever increasingly person to person. And so I do think it's incumbent on all of us to look at our offerings and are we meeting those needs of the consumer? And there's kind of that saying of, are you trying to find people for your products, or are you trying to create and develop products for specific people, meaning specific needs and problems that you're trying to solve? I think there's a lot in what you just said. And as it goes to disruption, it's not just a time of change and evolution within the channel, but also within the category that you squarely operate in. There's a lot happening in weight loss and weight management. Can you talk about some of the important shifts that you're seeing in the category?
Yeah, you can't cast a stone without like hitting our category right now. It's just everywhere in the media, highly disruptive. But before I dive into what we're seeing in the category itself, just as a general statement, when we're looking at transformation, we're looking at disruption, we're looking at a disrupted channel, whether it's a disrupted category, whatever it is, we have to go back and ask ourselves the questions. What have consumers historically bought from us? Is it a product or a service? Go check that off. What do we provide that they really care about? Do we actually know? What's shifted? What is the disruptive shift in our market, right? So understand that. What used to matter to them but now doesn't matter? Like understand what may have shifted. Okay, it seemed to be this was really important to them. How did that go away? How could that go away overnight? Did that change? Wow, what changed? And then the most important question, what does the consumer wish that we would do but we're not doing? So our category, because our entry point is weight loss, weight management, and the rise of the GLP-1s, and I was reading a stat from some research that was done. I believe that I'm probably going to misquote it because I can't remember exactly, but the awareness of like Ozempic is like 80%. It's like
Wow.
I've never seen anything like. I'm sure there's others that are but I'm not aware of such a rapid rise from like nothing to like everything everywhere. So disruption again, is a good thing, but it can feel like a bad thing, right? It's a good thing, but it can feel like a bad thing. How do we leverage the disruption? Well, you go to the consumer again, and we ask them, and we've done extensive consumer research. Okay, so what's changed? And we know that about 50% of consumers are open to medically supported weight loss, and 50%, at least today, at least at the time that we did the research, are not. Okay, great. We have an option for people who are not into medically supported weight loss, but are we able to serve that massive amount of people who are? And then you dive in deeper and you realize that, okay, 96% of these people, they recognize that lifestyle change is essential for long-term health. But only 17% of those people feel confident that they can do it by themselves. So we test our concept and we say, okay, let's test the concept. Let's go through it. Let's take the approach. And what do they think? How does it come back? Green, yellow, red, right? What do they like? What do they not like? And when we look at the concept test that we do, and we look at it and we say, okay, it looks like the concept is sound. That's good. They really like what we offer. They love the coaching. They love the lifestyle program. They love habit installation. They love that. In fact, consumers see value in the combined offer that we're talking about, right? Our concept. So that's a green check, and we say, okay, feel free to proceed. So we go through all the rigor of the quantitative, which then moves into the qualitative. And the qualitative is where you get all of these incredible verbatims, like, we wish you would talk about it this way, and small tweaks here, small tweaks there. And at the other end of it, then you go into home use tests to see, okay, what does your portfolio look like? How does it stand up? Is it really meeting that need? Okay, what does that look like? And then you transition and you transform, you make the pivots, you make the adjustments, and you come out the other side and you say, okay, now we just need to find a partner, in our case, clinicians who have the same mission and vision or similar mission and vision that we do. And of course, you have to make all the economics work. But what are you actually showing up in the marketplace, and what is your offer? What does it consist of? In our case, it used to be coach, community, our plans and programs, and the habits of health. Now it's lifestyle programs, right? We have a nutrition plan. We have our habits of health system that remains intact. The importance of community in breaking addictions and installing healthy habits, great. You have a coach, and now you have clinicians who form a very tight partnership, a collaboration, where the clinician does the job of a clinician. And through our partner, we have clinicians across the 50 states, and we have coaches across the 50 states. So now it's a powerful, compelling offering, showing up and saying, okay, we know that the consumer wants long-term health, understands that it's a difficult path, feels more confident when they have a coach, and preferably a coach who's been in their shoes before, meaning they've had a firsthand experience in breaking the cycles of disease, habits of disease, and installing healthy habits. What does that path actually look like? Who can speak with authenticity? They want coaches like that, direct experiences, who will walk with them, guide them, where their clinician is saying, yeah, here's a tool. It's a form of a medication. You need the following. You need a caloric restrictive diet. You need behavioral modification, counseling, and exercise. Great. We can be that lifestyle program to the medically supported weight loss program. You combine the thing, and it's a powerful new offering in the marketplace. But it's backed by the research. If we skipped over those steps, we would certainly get it wrong. But do you have a right to win? Yeah, consumer says yes. Consumer says you have a right to win. Okay, then let's transform the company yet again in pursuit of the win.
You are invited to join 600 plus of your executive peers, industry titans, subject matter experts, and visionaries united by the shared goal of growing your business in 2024 and beyond at DSN's 20th anniversary spring event, April 2nd through April 4th in Irving, Texas. Over the course of 2 days, you'll hear from over 40 industry executives representing over $50 billion in direct selling corporate revenue from stage. And recently, we announced that 22 companies managed to reach the incredible milestone of 4 years of consecutive revenue growth. And 6 of these standouts will be represented at the event as their game-changing executives share the secrets of their success. Moreover, 3 of these companies managed to grow by 100 million or more last year. Plus, we've added a new panel with Deborah Hayes, co-CEO at Neora, and Bernadette Shala, Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel at Arbonne, talking with Heather Chastain about the importance of building and maintaining a strong compliance strategy and key tips on how to do it. And if you're enjoying this episode with Nick Johnson, you'll definitely want to catch his DSU presentation, where he'll dive deeper into assessing the dynamics of disruption and embracing transformation by learning how to navigate change by defining clear transformation outcomes and making strategic decisions. You will get all of this and more at DSN's 20th anniversary spring event, April 2nd through April 4th in Irving, Texas. DSU is also free for all active corporate direct selling executives. Go to dsnevents.com to register and to learn more about the speakers and content you can look forward to at what we know will become the most epic event in channel history.
That's what I wanted to go back to, was the importance and the resulting success of you going back to the consumer, going to the data and understanding their needs, the problems that you're trying to solve for them, and letting that drive and inform the go forward strategy. It's a step, unfortunately, that often gets missed, but also then you went to concept testing, which I also think is pretty rare, unfortunately, in direct selling. I do think we feel we're different at times. Here's this great idea that we found from a third party or potentially someone from the field. Let's go launch this. We think it fits, and then put it out there without really understanding the impact that it's going to have, not only in the larger business, but our field's duplication model and their individual businesses. So I think it's so important to go back and make sure that concept testing is a part of it. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but that you need some data points to understand the impact and potential impact that's going to have, positive or negative. And then also testing and validation, talking about the messaging, the positioning of that product, the visuals, all the verbals that go along with it, testing and validating. That's another thing that I think is really important, that you can do too little or too much of. I've been fortunate to work with a couple large CPG companies that have brands we would all be familiar with. And I am blown away with the amount of testing that they do, down to the word, down to the sequencing of the words in a product statement or in a claim. It is incredible, but they know that they're going to put so many dollars behind it and so much emphasis that they want to make sure it's right. And I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from what you just talked about there. So all these changes that you've seen in the category and in the channel, interestingly, led to kind of a second big transformation for the company. Can you share a little bit about how you went about that process? And I'm curious, was it different this time? Was it a little bit easier because the field and the internal team had already, somewhat recently, meaning in the last several years, had gone through the process? Did that help kind of grease the skids a little bit for another transformation?
Yeah, it certainly did. And when we launched the OPTAVIA brand, it became $1 billion brand in the US in 5 years. And the transformation that we had from the allied set of business to the integrated company, there was so much heavy lifting that needed to be done. It's not just taking, some of the aesthetics of the home. It's not just like changing the cabinets or the flooring. You had to change the foundation, and you had to rip off the roof while still living in the house. And you had to make sure that all the utilities were running, but you had to do it in a certain amount of time because your growth would outpace your ability to operate to support it. I believe that those years of rapid growth and expansion through the integration of the companies that we had led to a more resilient team that understood that we could operate in perpetual whitewater, that there were no breaks, that you're always being disrupted. Either you're disrupting yourself because your operations need to be fine-tuned, or the competition is disrupting, the marketplace is disrupting. There's so many different ways. So we were more or less conditioned for expect the unexpected. That is a benefit for where we are right now. The field takes the journey with us. We're inextricably linked. And that's powerful as well. During the hypergrowth period, we were, at the worst because we didn't have enough distribution, fulfillment capacity. It was like 25-day wait. Like it took 25 days. And when you're on a program like ours, you can't run out of food and stay in fat burn. Our field took arrows. They took so many arrows as we were taking hit after hit after hit. Our program is very structured and it has to have a rhythm, right? Fulfillment has to take place like clockwork. I use those as examples because the field got stronger, the leadership became bolder, more convicted, more committed to the direction. So all of that, again, going back to this idea of like, what is in the bank? What is in the vault? What can you draw from? You can draw from that in these times, and it's required, in my opinion. I don't know how to get through it without all the different partners and stakeholders aligned. If you have misalignment, you have drag. If you have misalignment, you can get off course. If you have misalignment throughout any of those stakeholders, you can make tremendous progress only to see it evaporate because, oh wait, we skipped a step and they're actually not on board. So where we're going right now, which is a transformation, and in a way, it's kind of like, it's like going back in time because we were founded by a physician back in 1981. The co-founder of OPTAVIA, 20 years ago, who came here and developed this partnership with Medifast, he's a doctor as well. So we have this strong heritage, but we've never had that offering. So now with the partnership that we have, the field needs to understand their role. Can you work with clinicians? How do we do that? We've never done that before. Okay, what's in it for me? What does the business opportunity look like? Has it changed? Like, what is the income earning opportunity? How does it work within the compensation plan? Does the compensation plan need to change? Oh my gosh, don't say that. You're going to have panic. But change over time and repeating that message, saying it's a good thing, it's necessary, it's healthy. Don't ever get stuck, or else you'll be disrupted beyond your ability to adapt, has been critical. So yeah, all of those things with the transformation of the company that we've been through thus far is now paying dividends because of the nature of the disruption, because client acquisition has been disrupted so much because of weight loss medications.
I think it's so fascinating, this new go forward strategy, and it's so impressive in that you found a way forward. I think other companies would have kind of looked at marrying those two worlds as potentially impossible. Look, we can't really marry these two. So let's go look for some other way to compete and provide solutions to our consumers. But you didn't let that be a limiting factor. You found a way to make those worlds live together and to find and create a really amazing partnership there. I think that is absolutely fascinating. One of the questions that kind of just popped up in my mind too is, what is your kind of approach to differentiating this offering? So if someone could potentially get a somewhat similar offering in a different channel or from a different person, how do you approach thinking about kind of positioning and differentiating this offering?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like I said before, when we went through the quantitative, right, and we went through that foundational work, and we go through awareness, trial, brand perception, positioning, and then understanding what the side effects of medications are. Then you go into the qualitative and you talk about the community, right? You talk about the You talk about the story refinement, what needs to change there, deepen our understanding of what the people are experiencing while they're on weight loss medications. And then you go into these focus groups, right? And you query the focus groups. You know this is your bailiwick. And you understand, okay, what's the perception? What are the expectations? What's the pricing? What's the value? And then you come out and you say, all right, let's just test it all in the home use test. Let's figure out what the right thing is, understand the eating behaviors, right? If our target in the past was required through our program to eat 6 times a day, and you're on a weight loss medication and you don't have the same appetite, it's like, oh my gosh, what do you do? Well, you watch what people do and you tell them you ask them, what are you experiencing? You ask them their level of education. Do you know if you're getting enough protein? Do you know if you're actually becoming nutrient deficient? Are you experiencing sarcopenia, right? Are you losing skeletal muscle? Do you understand what quality weight loss is? Does it even matter to you? But the consumer says, yes, it does matter to me. And while some may say, yeah, I'm going to be on this my entire life because they have high susceptibility to highly addictive foods, great. It's a great tool. We just want to see you healthy. And then you drop altitude to the other consumer that says, well, I've been on the medications. Now what? Now what do I do? Because the weight comes back if you haven't changed your lifestyle. So then you go into the unique offering and you say, how do you feel like you can win? Well, we know the following. The consumer wants everything in one place. They do. They want coaching, a comprehensive coach-led program. It's not what the doctor's going to do. Unless you're going to an obesity clinic, you're not going to get that holistic care. Who is going to actually walk beside you? Who's going to check in with you? Who's going to do the follow-up? Yeah, your doctor will while you're on prescription. But then when you're transitioning, who's going to be there for you? Do you understand what the right foods are? Do you understand what quality weight loss is? Do you understand how dangerous the loss of skeletal muscle is, especially after a certain age? That is very difficult to rebuild. The education that consumers have around food and nutrition is dangerously low in our country. It's the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing. I believe in a brighter future for our children, our grandchildren. I believe that we can turn and reverse these trends. I believe that we can actually change the way that we live. So when I go back to your question about how do you feel like, okay, well, I can go here, 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 and here. You could do that. You could do that. But is it aligned to your goal? Is it aligned to your outcome? The value that we believe that we provide is through everything in one place, that we focus on the lifestyle, that we provide you with tools, and we walk with you. And if there's a bad day, don't worry about it. Everybody has a bad day. But who's telling you that that's okay? Don't beat yourself up. Just get back in it.
That's great. I love that. And I know that holistic and kind of comprehensive approach is going to be super, super powerful. So as you approach the strategic planning process, I kind of want to talk more, get into some of the results and some of the learnings from these transformations, these 2 significant transformations that the company has gone through. I'm curious, as you look at it, what are some of the main indicators or dynamics that would really necessitate a transformation versus a shift in strategy? And I know that sounds somewhat semantic, but we're all very familiar with the strategic planning process, meaning it probably comes around more frequently than we would like. So how as a company, how do you know when it's time to do this kind of more significant, comprehensive transformation versus, look, we need to adjust the ship by a few degrees here?
Yeah. When I was speaking earlier about the change in consumer preferences and the availability of other solutions. So what happens outside of our 4 walls matters a whole lot. And it's those forces and factors on the outside that in my opinion will tell you the magnitude of the change, right? So you can change and you can shift and you can say, all right, well, it's really just like a portfolio mix issue, or it looks like the brand doesn't have enough elasticity, so maybe new product brand, right? Those are all within the core, right? You can move into adjacencies. The business model that sits underneath of it still works, right? You got to make sure that the volumes are where they need to be and that there's an income earning opportunity associated with it. You know, those shifts, I would say, are not of the same magnitude, right? So what is it that tells you it's time to transform? The consumer says, what you have today is not what I'm looking for. Okay, great. Is that 5% of you? 10% of you? 10% of you? 10% of you? And I keep repeating 10% because I don't think people go far enough. Sometimes we think because we get uncomfortable, well, I think it's just 10%. Go back again and check. You will see it in your numbers. You'll see it in customer acquisitions. You'll see it. Okay, so what's happening? Is it changing? Oh yeah, it went from 10 to 15. 10 to 15, is that, okay, what could we do? Well, we could extend lifetime value over here by adding another, an adjacent category, and let's, give that to our sales force or whatever it is, see if they can make up the loss or whatever. But more fundamentally, if you see that there is a massive shift that is going to take you to a new type of consumer or the same consumer just done differently, then I would suggest leaning into the transformation side, because if you minimize the potential disruption and you're not responding to it, you lose time. And time is the only resource that isn't fungible. But getting ahead of it, if you can, or responding to it with enough time, I'm a big fan of the transformation because you get people's attention. And then you start going and transforming your offering. You need an entire operation to support it. So in some cases, yeah, if you're able to use the same manufacturing, you're able to do this or that, and you said, well, we can manufacture that ourselves, or do you need to actually say, we're no longer a manufacturer. We're just going to go 100% to contract manufacturing. Like maybe you don't need an in-house customer service. That's one of the first things I did when I came to the company. I said, that's not going to be our core competency. We're going to outsource that. And we're going to get cost improvements there. But the point is, those are shifts, right? Operational shifts. The strategy changes so much when your offering changes to meet the customer, to meet the consumer. And that's where I would say most companies, I would recommend doing a very thorough look to say, what if this continues? What would we be willing to change? What's our right to win? And get super aggressive in the research,
I think it speaks a lot that you went back to the customer again. To answer that question, it was back to go to the customer, go to the data, to understand what that go-forward strategy could be. I'm curious, and this might seem like a minor question, but from a messaging standpoint, external messaging, did you use the terminology transformation with the field or any other external audiences? Because there are going to be some expectations and risks that come with how you even message that to the field.
Yeah, it can be scary. It's a great point. Initially, no, did not. We spoke in a language that the field understands, and so because I knew that the field had talked for many years, and trained on the difference between a herd of cattle, and bison on the open plains, is that when there's a storm coming, the bison run through it to get to the other side of it faster, and cows will try to go around it, and it takes a very long time. So rather than talk about something that was like jargony, corporate, something from the literature, I just used their language and we talked about it in a way that they would understand. So we called everything Operation Buffalo. They immediately understood what I meant. It's time to go through the storm. We launched that a year ago because we knew we were going to go through the storm. It was time to get the field to understand what had changed, and how we're going to weather it. And guess what? By using their language, by meeting them where they are, and that's the key, meet them where they are. Don't have them come to you. Meet them where they are. They said, I know what you're saying to me. You don't need to say anything else. It's time to go. Time to move. We're going to go through the storm. We're going to get the other side of it faster than trying to go around it.
That's great. And I think having that shared vocabulary and those shared stories and analogies goes a long way to creating kind of that cohesive culture and that trust as well. I'm curious, as part of these transformations, we've talked product, we've talked process. I'm curious on the technology side. Obviously, we're hearing a lot. You can't look at your news feed without hearing a story about AI, but I'm curious how you or the company is looking at approaching AI in either supporting corporate or servicing the consumer with these, rituals and systems that they do on a daily basis.
Gaining an understanding of the role of technology, whether it's AI, machine learning, whatever it is, right? Understanding the role of the human and the highest point of contribution that the human can make in the experience versus how technology can enable the experience. So there's high value add activity that needs to be performed, and there's lower value add activity. And what can be automated, right? What can be outsourced? Getting very clear on now your sales channel and understanding what are salespeople, if you're salespeople or if you're advocates or ambassadors or coaches in our case, what is it that they really should be doing that can't be replicated? Like, what is the secret sauce? Then you ask yourself the question, can technology do it better with more consistency, with more frequency, to make sure that the role of the coach or the distributor or the ambassador can stay very focused? And one of the first principles of our industry is everything duplicates for bad or good. So if you have complexity because the role has been ambiguous, or the role has been, well, you need to do everything on behalf of your customers, when you don't even know if that customer cares that you're doing those things. Maybe the technology could do that for them. Do you really need to be doing all those things? Getting clear on those roles first, like what really matters, and have measures to support it. Don't just make statements. We cannot make statements. Statements without the data to back it up, that's gonna be a painful road to travel. But understanding, okay, when you do this and you test it in this way with salesperson A, can you test it and replicate it over and over and over again? Can you hold a control and do it a different way? Can you do A/B tests with your field? That's where I see where technology can be a powerful enabler. How do you actually do the types of testing to get to what a true best practice is? And understanding how performance across the lines of business can be measured, can be democratized, even institutionalized. And do you have a field that's open to understanding how the technology could enable them to do more of what they do best? Not just what they could do average. What could they do best? And can the technology take over for them? And those are some of the key investments that we're making, and through our partnership that we've struck up with LifeMD. That's the question of the day. Can we get super clear on the scope, the role, the charter of the coach, what the clinician does and what the technology does to move the customer through the pathway?
That's great. Thank you for sharing those insights. Again, I love that it comes back to the data, to the testing, helping to improve our, the A/B, our multivariate testing, huge opportunities there. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to other companies that are looking to go through a similar process? What do you feel some of the main learnings for you and the company have been? And also, can you touch on maybe some of the main gotchas or inherent risks or landmines that are there to avoid?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think that's actually great. I think it bears repeating. I think that understanding, having a good understanding of the foundation, which is what can we uniquely do for the consumer? What can we uniquely do for the consumer? And going through that process of, like I said before, what's changed, right? What's changed? How has it changed? How have behaviors changed? What are preferences like? Test it, query it, go through all of the rigor of the consumer research. Spend time developing relationships of trust with the field. Because in a transformation phase, the amount of changes and the magnitude of those changes will require a tremendous amount of focus and attention to the personal relationship side. I think what we talked about earlier in this discussion of never underestimate where your trust level is at. Always just assume it's not at the level it needs to be in order to get you across the next milestone. And you'll make the investments early and often, and you'll draw from them more often than you'll think. So I would say have a clear understanding of how that trust is built, the transparency that's required, understanding how this opportunity that comes through a disruption will benefit everyone, and be explicit on your commitments. We're committed to running a solid ship, right? We're committed to running a profitable business. We're committed to paying our coaches handsomely. We're committed, just describe them, make them explicit, take the guesswork out. So after you do all the field things, right, to make sure that they have a solid understanding of what the strategy is that they're aligning behind, make sure that you have the team on board as well. And wherever possible, in my experience, bring those two sides together. Create the operational empathy. Because as times get tough and stress can build, you can start to kind of poke at each other, different groups. Well, maybe our coaches aren't doing enough. Like, why can't they just make it happen for us? Right? The friction can rise up. Tamp it down. Bring people together. Make sure that it's a shared mission, a shared objective, that we can only win when we all win, right? Aligning incentives to the shared win has been critical. And as I said before, rather than tell people what's so great about our channel, our industry, ask the people what's maybe not so great. What would they prefer to see? Is it a delivery system that we're not delivering? Is it a compensation structure that we should be exploring? So I'm a big advocate, regardless of the time, but especially during times when you're making key strategic decisions, to get very clear on how we show up in the marketplace. Because the only opinion at the end of the day that really matters when in business is the consumer. How they see you, how they view you, how they value you is what determines the future.
Thank you. That's a really powerful list and approach. So last couple of questions. Now that you've gone through this process a couple times, is there anything you would do differently? Any major stumbling block that you now know is there to avoid?
The gotchas, right? The stumbling blocks. I think about some of the stumbling blocks, and a few come to mind. And they're illustrations of what I said before about what to do, in my opinion. When we've gotten into a good flow and we feel like we have a very linear path to success, like we can see the other side of it, and we don't have spotters who are kind of checking the horizon, you can get blindsided. We did something with the field. We changed something with the field that we thought it was like a gimme. Like, this is not going to be a problem as part of the transformation. Like, it makes all the sense in the world, but we skipped a step. We normally walk top leaders through, like, in a tremendous amount of detail, everything that we were going to do. But because we felt that we had to rush this, or we felt that the execution timeline was truncated, we said, I think this will be okay. And it was a judgment call. And it was the wrong one, because it set us back. We had to go and start over again. It was a small thing that had an outsized impact. And that was kind of like an acute situation, like in terms of field and aligning your field and going through the right alignment process with the field. it didn't mean that we had to shut anything down, or it didn't mean that we had to change anything, but we lost time, and time is precious. I would say, though, that the gotcha is not having a clear understanding of your leading indicators. How are you reading the tea leaves? What are you actually looking at to see what's changing? I would say that we've done a fairly good job, but in hindsight, we can always do better. And I know exactly what I would have done differently to anticipate a change or disruption. I know what I would have done, what measures I would have been ignoring. Some of the measures that we look at are lagging indicators, and we don't call it out. We don't qualify the indicator as being lagging. And so it gives you a false sense of, oh, everything's fine. No, you're just looking at a lagging indicator. I would be qualifying those metrics to a very granular degree so that every single operator in the company, every manager, every vice president and above, everybody knows these are the measures that matter. These are the ones that if they do not sustain at a certain rate, will cause disruption. And then you can look for the cause of the disruption, if that makes sense. That's something that I think is critical at all times, but significant and more meaningful and has an outsized impact when your category or your channel is under duress.
Thank you for that. I'll offer one, having gone through a transformation or two as well in my career. I think to your point, if you're confident in the research and the data and the insights and the go forward strategy, one of the risks is not having the commitment to see it through, because you are going to meet resistance. There are going to be headwinds until it's out and normalized and just part of the day-to-day operations of the business. So it's easy to kind of waver on that commitment if you're not careful. But I think what you said is brilliant. I really enjoy that. So last question I'd love to end on. What do you think for you personally is the greatest leadership lesson that you personally learned through this?
The greatest leadership lesson.
Maybe one that stands out. I won't make it so, I won't put too much weight on it, but one that really stands out to you.
The leadership lesson I would say that stands out the most, given the context of transformation, disruption, is to articulate the disruption in a way that is more true to its nature, which is positive. That leadership is in this context, seeing the other side of it and saying, no, I think we struggle with change as humans, but it's change that's required for us to progress. And having a very crisp articulation of how disruption is a benefit. And then not only saying it, but showing how it is a benefit by evolving the strategy, being willing to make tough decisions. Field organizations, they stand back and they look and say, okay, they really mean it. Look what they're prepared to do. And they say, I get confident when I see big, bold decisions being made, that leading out of a storm or through a storm, however long it is, takes a tremendous amount of courage. And so through this, that's been the biggest key through this specific phase, is looking at it, embracing it, and saying, my goodness, just zoom out, folks. Look at the obesity trends across the nation. Look at what's happening in spite of the great breakthroughs in technology, in spite of the, over 3 million people that we have helped in the United States alone. Zoom out. Take a breath. Understand that what we have is powerful, that the consumer says to our concept, yes, yes, yes. It's like greens everywhere. There was like one yellow. I've never seen a positioning statement come back in that form. It was remarkable. Share that with confidence and tell them, progress is disruptive by nature. Lean in. And if they see that from the company, and the people who have a tremendous amount of influence embrace it, the discomfort is where all the magic happens. And they realize that. And then that leadership, that type of leadership duplicates too. And people take a deep breath. They zoom out and say, I see what's changed now. It's not a threat. It's now a $100 billion market. It's like 10x'd. What an incredible time. See how it shifts?
That's a powerful idea to end on, how we position these transformations, these changes, and these strategies ultimately are going to deeply impact the end result and how it's received. So, Nick, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing all the incredible insights. This is one that I know that I need to go back and listen to a few times to really glean all the great wisdom and insights that you shared. And I have a couple new analogies that I'm going to start using and stealing from you. So may we all be more like the buffalo, and let's just turn into the storm and walk right through it with great confidence. So please give our best to everybody back there. Tell Dan hello for us. And we look forward to talking to you at DSU.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for tuning in. Please take a minute to give a 5-star rating and review to help Direct Approach continue to provide more candid interviews and insights for corporate executives. And please register you and your team now for the Spring 20th Anniversary Celebration events taking place April 2nd through April 4th in Irving, Texas. You can register at dsnevents.com. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.